Hello fashion fans, and welcome to the first ever episode of Clothing Made Easy. I'm your humble host Tanner Karslan, and I'll be taking you on a journey throughout the clothing manufacturing industry. Okay, what's going on here? So according to the International Labor Organization, the world is currently experiencing an increase in income inequality. That leads to poverty, that leads to social instability, that even leads to conflict. Think of it like this: there are millions of people working around the world in the clothing manufacturing industry, and many of them are below the poverty line. There's even child labor. What the fashion is that? How does this even make sense in this world today? Anyway, this is the reason why we decided to start our first episode regarding ethics and fair trade clothing manufacturing. So let's get started. We need to first define what it means for a clothing manufacturer to be ethical and fair trade. So now, according to the World Fair Trade Organization, fair trade is a trading partnership based on dialogue, transparency, and respect that seek greater equity in international trade. It contributes to sustainable development by offering better trading conditions to and securing the rights of marginalized producers and workers, especially in the South. Fair trade organizations have a clear commitment to fair trade as the principal core of their mission. They, backed by consumers, are engaged actively in supporting producers, awareness raising, and in campaigning for changes in the rules and practices of conventional international trade. So in short, what that really means is that you've got all these big companies that are billion-dollar organizations that are manufacturing their clothing all the way in these southern developing countries, but they're not using fair terms of trade, which means they're expecting really low costs for their manufacturing, and at the same time the factories themselves are also paying really low wages to their workers. That's not a sustainable or fair trade environment. According to us, fair trade means we respect our employees and their individual needs. We pay our employees living wages. We provide continued advancement and growth opportunities. We provide a safe and healthy working environment. We pay our suppliers their stated fees and only negotiate where needed. And we work hard to gain the support of our clients by educating them on the benefits of being fair trade. And now the big why. As Simon Sinek always says, start with why. That actually defines your purpose. When you communicate and act on your why correctly, this is probably a really good reason why a lot of our clients actually gravitate towards us. We are really clear on our why. We don't want to hurt anyone along our supply chain or our employees or around the world because of our work. But now, not all manufacturers and brands actually think that way. What's happening is you've got all these consumers around the developed nations of the world, and what they want is they want lots of clothing very fast, and they want it cheap. And along comes an unethical brand that finds all these manufacturers around the world that charge really low for clothing manufacturing, and they're like, great, let's just produce fast and cheap. And these factories are obviously in developing countries. So how can a developing country factory charge so little for making clothing? Mainly the owner of the factory decides, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pay my workers proper wages. Do they pay them livable wages? No. Do they pay them minimum wages? No. They're actually paying them pennies on the dollar. And they know that the workers are desperate in these countries looking for jobs, so they pay them really low wages, and these people are working 16, sometimes 18-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes even all week long. Everyone besides the brand owner and, of course, the clothing manufacturing owner gets shafted. What's worse is in many cases, there's even children working at factories like these. The reason for that? Their families are poor, they're destitute, they're desperate looking to survive. Infographic time. Did you know that there are 160 million children in child labor around the world? According to the ILO and UNICEF, 1 in 10 children worldwide are working when they should be going to school and enjoying their childhood. And about 50% of these children work in hazardous work. Let that sink in for a moment. Children working in hazardous work. What the fashion? Now, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ethical and fair trade clothing manufacturers around the world, like us, but us being here isn't enough. Brands have a responsibility to adjust their thinking about the impact that they have on the people who work in their supply chains that manufacture their clothing. Brands need to also care about the negative consequences of working with unethical factories just so that they can turn a profit. And brands need to also adjust their retail pricing. Adjusting the retail pricing, yes, so that these factories can actually pay their workers livable wages. I mean, cheap and fast is so pre-2000s. Now it's time to start working with ethical and fair trade clothing manufacturers who actually focus on quality manufacturing and the livelihoods of their employees. Yes, maybe you do pay a little bit more for that garment that you've always wanted to manufacture, but don't you think it's worth it given that children and families around the world aren't going to be stuck in poverty because of the clothing they make for you? Okay, we totally understand how daunting it can seem to try to find a good, ethical, and fair trade clothing manufacturer. Don't forget to type that into Google. Ethical, fair trade, clothing manufacturer. That's what you're supposed to be looking for. So, now that we've concluded our first episode, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below so you can keep up to date on all the new episodes that we're going to be bringing to you from Clothing Made Easy. I'm your humble host, Tanner Kili Karslan, and we'll see you next time.